afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Rajuji. Hey, Yogesh, how are you?
Very good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you.
So I think at the outset I will thank Mr. Sridharan for being with us for this program. We have been thinking about this program for quite some time now, and I feel that it will have a lot of benefit for our electronics industry. Members who are joining today, and this is a scheme of great interest for all of us. I will just take this opportunity to once again thank Messrs. Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan for supporting this and for participating in this. And I think it is an area where there is a lot of interest, and still there is a lot of uncertainty, I think, which is a bigger issue right now. And with with MEIS now going away, this scheme has become very important. So I will, before I hand over the mic to Mr. Paresh Vasani, the president of Elsina, and then further on to Mr. Sridharan for taking the program forward, I welcome all the participants who have already joined, and I guess we should have almost 100 participants as we go along, because we have a good number of registrations. I will just take 1 minute to introduce Mr. Sridharan and his firm. Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan is a full-service law firm based in India, a very highly reputed firm which has been operating since 1985, and it has spread across 13 locations in India, and has a great reputation, especially in case of tax laws and tax issues. And I believe that they have dealt with more than 50,000 tax disputes so far in the country, and at all levels of judicial authority, right from the quasi-judicial authorities up to the Supreme Court. So I think we are in great hands here, and with somebody who's an expert. I'll now say a few lines about Mr. Sridharan, who's a highly experienced, should I say, lawyer or advocate. He has 15 years of experience in compliance audit in the field of customs and central excise. I think something which has been extremely important for us. Customs and central excise, now of course GST, are of great importance for the industry. He has conducted a number of performance appraisals on various export promotion schemes of the Government of India for inclusion in the audit reports of the CAG of India, I think, which itself speaks volumes about the level and the competence of Mr. Sridharan. Mr. Sridharan has also served with the Indian Audit and Accounts Department before joining Lakshmi Kumaran and Mr. Sridharan in March 2007. Sir, we thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to your views, to your expert views, and there will be some questions also which we will be raising, which we have received from our members. Before I hand over the mic to you, sir, I will request Mr. Paresh Vasani, President of Elsina, kindly say a few words about the subject and about our association. Over to you, Paresh.
Thank you, Rajuji. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Sridharan. Thank you for your time for this very important topic that we would like to hear from you. Elsina is one of the oldest 50-year-old association for electronics industry, and we have been on a forefront with the government when it comes to policies, when it comes to dealing with members' requirement and making sure that it provides a lot of networking opportunities all across India as well as outside India. Elsina recognizes the importance of electronics manufacturing in India, and we promote manufacturing in India, especially electronics. And we would like to make sure that this activity that LCNA does are in line with our overall objective. And this seminar plays a very important role for this. As we know, Government of India is doing a lot of initiative on various schemes and promotions and things that has helped most of the members of LCNA and electronics industry in general to have a very strong Atmanirbhar manufacturing policy and manufacturing opportunities and market access for Indian electronics, especially in India. However, I believe that every electronics company in India should also have some global exposure. And the global exposure comes with access to export and doing exports. This enable an electronics industry or a company in India to become more competitive and technologically driven organization, because electronics is a lot of technology is required. I believe electronics industry needs an export, and this new scheme can play a very significant role. And with the extent of MEI is almost not there now, we are looking forward to more opportunities and understanding for RODTEP. Thankfully, we have a very learner expert with us, so I don't think so I should take much of time. Thank you again, Mr. Sridharan, and we are excited and looking forward to your discussion and information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Sridharan, and I've been very aptly, very beautifully introduced by our President and Secretary General. So I don't need further introduction. I do not want to take much time before I jump into the topic. I will start sharing my screen. Unfortunately, my colleague, Mr. Srinivasan, who was supposed to join, could not make it. He was slightly indisposed. So I'll be handling the entire session myself. So I'll start sharing the screen right now. I hope the screen is visible, sir.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the topic for today's discussion is number one, rebate of duties and taxes in export products scheme, RODTEP scheme, and also concentrating or focusing on the IGCR, the import of goods at concession rate of duty for the manufacture of excisable goods scheme, which has undergone a lot of change, and even in the recent budget, there have been some changes introduced into the rules. So these are the two topics that I'll be covering today. First, I'll take up the RODTEP scheme, which is actually the happening scheme right now. As you all know, sir, this will be the background I'll be focusing on, background, eligibility, procedure, and potential issues. So now there is a background to the introduction of this RODTEP scheme. As all of you must be aware, that Government of India ran into a problem with the WTO's dispute resolution body pertaining to the export incentive schemes like EOUs, SEZ schemes, EPCG, and of course, the ever popular MEI scheme, the Merchandise Export India Incentive Scheme. So the US and Europe complained that these actually constituted a subsidy, which is actually prohibited under that ASCM scheme, Agreement on Subsidies and Countervailing Measures scheme. So the dispute went up to the WTO's dispute resolution body. There India lost the case. The dispute resolution body decided that these schemes actually constituted prohibited subsidies, provided prohibited subsidies. Therefore, Government of India had to withdraw it. But there is actually an appellate mechanism. Even though the decision went against Government of India, there is an appellate mechanism available to Government of India, and Government of India already filed an appeal before the appellate body. But fortunately, the appellate body is not in session. They have not constituted the appellate body. Therefore, there is some breathing time for Government of India to react to redesign their export incentive schemes. It is only with that intention that Government of India decided that, yes, even though we have an appellate mechanism available, MEI scheme has almost outlived its utility. Therefore, It is time they withdrew that scheme, and in its place, they had to introduce a WTO compliant incentive scheme. So therefore, Government of India decided as a first step, withdraw the MEIS scheme and introduce a WTO compliant incentive scheme. It is only with that background that the present RODTEP scheme has been introduced. So I will not focus much on the case by United States and the Europe, etc., before the WTO's dispute resolution body. So these schemes which are questioned by these complainants, customs duty exemption under EOU, ESTP and B2B. ESTP is electronic hardware technology parts, as you may be aware, and then biotechnology, and then EPCG and DFI schemes, the customs duty exemptions and the IGST exemptions, direct tax deductions available under the SCEZ program, special economic zones, and the Scrips issued under the MEIS scheme. So these were under the scanner, and the panel held that these were all these subsidies or prohibited subsidies. Therefore, Government of India had to withdraw. Certain time limits have been prescribed, but these time limits are subject to our case before the appellate body, and as I said, the appellate body is yet to be constituted. Therefore, the appeal is pending before the appellate body. So till then, Government of India has time to redesign the programs, and now they have first decided to do away with MEIS and replace it with the RODTEP scheme. As you're all aware, MEIS was introduced in the FTP 2015-20 to provide incentives to exporters for exporting certain specified products to certain specified markets. And the MEIS was actually designed to compensate the infrastructural inefficiencies in our export process and the associated. There was no actual determination of what constituted these infrastructural inefficiencies, etc. Therefore, Government of India ran into trouble before the WTO's appellate, the dispute resolution body. So the rewards were in the form of duty credit scrips, and the MEIS being export contingent reward scheme, it was held to be prohibited. As I said, these were treated as prohibited subsidies. And then Ministry of Commerce in September 2020, there were some difficulties in releasing the monies. Sometime in September 2020, they said they initially stopped accepting claims for MEIS. Then they fixed a ceiling limit of 2 crores per IEC. Then ultimately they decided they will do away with the MEIS scheme come 31st December 2020 to be replaced by the RODTEP scheme from the 1st January 2021. So this is the background. With this RODTEP is called the remission of duties and taxes on export products. This was announced by the Finance Minister on 14 September 2019. This is all news to replace the MEIS, ROSCL and ROSCTL. ROSCTL is for textile specific remission scheme. And these both ROSCL, ROSCTL and MEIS will come to an end on 31st December. RODTEP to take over from 1st January. So this is about the background. RODTEP will be actually determined by the committee constituted for this purpose. There is a committee which is actually looking into the drawback entitlement. The very same committee is now sitting, deciding the RODTEP rates also. They have already called for data, the data on tax incidents, embedded tax incidents and embedded duty incidents for various export councils. And they've already started working on computing the rates also. And the role of the committee is to fix maximum rates that are eligible for the products that are exported from India. And within those, Government of India can come up with different rates for different products, like in the case of drawback. So this exercise is going on. In fact, they were supposed to have completed the entire process of fixing before 31st December, so that from 1st January this scheme could have been launched. But unfortunately, the process of determination, computation, etc. is going on. There have been the committee held various number of meetings with various export agencies also. So there were a number of questions. coming up and they wanted to sort it out also. And then we knew that they have unfortunately called for data from DTA units and not from EOU or SCSM units. I'll come to this a little later, why they were not focusing on EOU and SCSM units, only from DTA units. So the data was called for, the computation process is already on, and various associations have already submitted data also. We are also assisting certain associations in computing the data. That process is already on now. Now, what is the salient features? We'll just deal with the salient features of this RODTEP scheme. This RODTEP scheme would refund the embedded central, state, and local duties and taxes that were so far not being rebated. As you are, we are entitled to drawback. Drawback used to be, prior to the introduction of GST, drawback used to refund both the excise, service tax, and the customs duty components of the customs duty components involved in the inputs used in the production of the export product. So the duty incidence on the inputs used in the export product was being rebated through the drawback scheme. We also had we had FMS, focus market scheme, focus product scheme. So all these were combined into MEAS, but unfortunately MEAS did not take into account the duty incidence. It was only to compensate, as I said, the operational, the cost element of the operational inefficiencies involved in the production and export, etc. But the drawback was actually focusing on the actual duty incidence or the average duty incidence of the inputs used in the export product. So therefore, the drawback was actually taken into account the duty incidence, so the average duty incidence, which could be determined. But there are duty incidences and tax incidences which are embedded. For example, you purchase materials from your tier one vendors. They supply the product to you and they use transportation. They use inward transportation to the components from their factory to your factory, and the lorry that carries this product, the components to your factory, spends fuel. The fuel, there is a tax element. There is a duty element on the HSD. As you all aware, the excise duty element is almost constitutes about 40% of the total cost of the excise duty that is paid on fuel. So the fuel cost includes an excise duty element, and that excise duty element is actually passed on as a cost for the components that you procure. But that could not be computed, that was not computed any time before, and it was not also being refunded to you by any of the schemes that are currently in operation. So this is just one example. Likewise, your component supplier may have procured his inputs from his vendors, and he would also incur the cost embedded duty or tax elements. Those duty and tax elements are actually built into the cost of the components, which are ultimately passed on to you. So all these elements of duty and tax incidents, which was ultimately being borne by the exporters, by the producers, and when the product is exported, the cost on the export product goes up. The Government of India's policy has always been that the product should be exported and not the taxes or duties. But all these schemes that are in operation, like drawback, etc., or even your earlier DEPB, they were only compensating or rebating the actual duty or the average duty or tax incidence, which could be perceived or computed. But the embedded taxes and duties were never computed by under any other scheme, and this is the first time that Government of India have decided that they will try to compute that embedded tax or duties and then compensate or pay it by way of a rebate or an incentive to you. That is actually the RODTEP, revision of duties and taxes. So the taxes and duties that are built into the cost of the export product will be remitted, will be paid back to you. That is the scheme of this RODTEP. This Government of India feels, and we also feel that it is WTO compliant. because we are actually taking into account the duty incidence or the embedded duty or tax incidence, which has gone into the cost, which has been already factored into the cost of the component, etc., that is used in the production of the export product. Therefore, this is WTO compliant, unlike in the case of MEAs, etc. So this will be computed as a percentage, like in the case of MEAs, like in the case of drawback, this will be computed as a percentage of your FOB value of the export product, and it will be paid to you by way of a credit script, like they were doing for MEAs or DEPB. It will be given to you by way of a credit script. And as it is designed now, like in the case of drawback, when you file the shipping bill itself, that is treated as a claim for drawback. Your shipping bill should be treated as a claim for DEPB, and title duty credit will be converted to DTP scripts and to be used to pay BCD. Like you are doing for in the case of DEPB and MEAs, you can use it to pay BCD. So therefore, scheme, this incentive is actually designed to compute or identify embedded taxes or duties that are built into the cost of your export product, and that will be rebated or refunded to you by way of this credit script. So this exercise is going on. They have already decided certain formats for computing this data, and the data is being analyzed by the committee. In fact, we have tried to work out the RODTEP element for certain exporters by collecting data from the tier 1 and tier 2 vendors. In fact, the wonderful thing about the scheme is that we need to have data. If we can get the data from your tier 1 or tier 2 vendors, we can compute the duty or tax incidence, the embedded duty or tax incidence. For example, if you are using a casting, the casting uses aluminum casting. That aluminum comes from bauxite. The bauxite is mined somewhere. So right from the mining of the bauxite till it becomes a casting, until it reaches you, whatever is the embedded tax incidence, the entire downstream tax or duty incidence, if we can compute it, Government of India is ready to refund it as a rebate. So all that we require is the data. They want concrete data for computing this tax incidence. In fact, we tried to do that, but from the mines to the first stage ingot manufacturers, we had difficulty. Therefore, we had gone before the committee asking them to work out the per kg cost, per kg tax incidence in the case of ingots. They will get information from various sources. So we had asked them to work out the tax incidence, per kg tax incidence in the case of ingots, from ingots to castings, etc., and factor it into the final product which is exported. So when I'm exporting a final product containing certain castings, I had actually asked the committee to go back and work out what is the per kg tax incidence in the case of ingots and per kg tax incidence in the case of castings, and then factor it into our account, because we find it very difficult to get the data from downstream producers. So this is, if data could be compiled or collected from your downstream producers, you can go to the last stage of mining your raw material. From that stage, we can work out the tax incidence and then factor it into your final product and then get a very good rate of RODTEP. So this is the wonderful, wonderful aspect of this scheme. Only the problem is getting the data from these downstream vendors. So therefore, we are asking the committee to get into that, to apply their mind and factor that cost also into our final cost of the tax incidence. In fact, that is one of the demand by one of the export organizations to the committee. The committee has actually agreed to consider that also. Let us see how the committee finally fixes the rate. Now, these are the indicative taxes that are actually will be actually computed by this committee now. VAT and excise duty, as you're all aware, VAT on fuel is a very major element. So VAT and excise duty on fuel used in transportation of inputs. That's the reason why we given it as the first input. So VAT and excise duty on fuel used in transportation, both inward transportation, outward transportation. You bring the components to your factory, and after production, the final product is exported. Again, you are using transportation for taking the goods to the port, etc. So both outward and inward transportation, fuel is involved, and fuel carries with it an element of VAT and excise duty. So that is a very major element, and our exercises show that it is a very major element. So therefore, this has to be taken. And VAT on fuel used in the generation of captive power, VAT on fuel used in farm sector may not be applicable to you, mandi tax, then duty on electricity. There are many states which levy tax on electricity, duty on electricity, that has to be included. Stamp duty, then GST on input used in the production of agricultural products for a particular certain sectors, and GST in compensation system, coal use in production of electricity. This is also one important component, or at least for certain sectors. And GST on inputs of transport, the credit is not available to them, therefore they pass it on directly. And then GST on procurements from unregistered suppliers, where you have to pay GST and take it, and credit is not available. Therefore, that is also GST which is not available to you as credit, that is to be factored into this, because that becomes a cost to you. So therefore, all these elements are indicative elements of tax or duty incidents, which can be computed, and we can go before the committee, ask them to determine the RODTEP rates for your export product. And the formats have already been decided by the committee. I hope that your association has already submitted the data to the committee for computation of your entitlements. Then eligibility. There are certain issues now cropping up here. As the scheme was originally constituted, all exporters of eligible products could claim the RODTP incentive, subject to certain exceptions, they said. Then they also said exporters claiming drawback and simultaneously claim RODTP. The simple reason that these two schemes compensate two different tax or duty incidences. Therefore, there is no question of any double benefit. So therefore, when you're exporting, you can simultaneously claim both drawback as also RODTEP for the product, provided the product is now eligible for claiming the RODTEP and the rate is fixed for that. The problem recently, when they announced it, they said the IGCR system did not allow RODTEP benefit to advance authorization holders, EOU units, job boards, SCs, exporters, etc. There is absolutely no reason provided, but the IGCR system did not permit the exporters of under advance authorization schemes, EOUs, etc., even when they intimated their intention to claim, because they were required to give their intention to claim RODTEP rates. The declarations in the shipping bills were also accordingly modified. But when they tried to claim, when they tried to file the shipping bills after indicating the declaration, the IGCR system was not permitting. So there was some that issue is being addressed at the highest level now. Various associations have gone before the government seeking clarity, but that the final word is yet to be said on that. But the fact remains that exporters under the advance authorization schemes, EOUs, SCs, are in a position now to stake the claims, leave alone getting the benefit. Even staking the claims, the system was not permitting. So the denial of incentive to EOUs, it is actually it is a discrimination which is very unjust, because the scheme itself is to compensate the embedded tax or duty incidents. The EOU advance authorization holders are indeed getting benefit of the taxes that are perceivably paid or payable, not the embedded tax. Embedded tax, they are also incurring. Their export products also come loaded with the embedded tax or duty incidences. Therefore, denying that benefit to EOUs or advance authorization holders is clearly discriminatory, and it is not just. Therefore, all the associations have gone before the committee. There is actually a background, I'll explain it a little later, why this problem arose. But that is for Government of India to sort it out. But Ministry of Commerce have already taken up with the Ministry of Finance, so that issue ultimately will be sorted out, we hope. In fact, the Madras Export Processing Zone, the SEs try to indicate the declaration of intent remarks column. Their SEs and exporters were asked to indicate the declaration, the remarks column. You indicate it. Tomorrow, if ultimately the question is sorted out, you will be able to claim it. So they had already, they were permitted to indicate the declaration in the shipping bill in the remarks column. So we have said the clarity is expected from the Ministry of Commerce through scheme notifications, or ultimately when the foreign trade policy is announced in 1st April. Foreign trade policy is due in 1st April. Probably an announcement may come through the foreign trade policy, or it may come through when the RODTP scheme rates are ultimately notified by Government of India. The clarity may emerge through those notifications. This is what we are expecting. But the discussions are already on with between Government of India, Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Finance. Fortunately, Ministry of Commerce appear to be taking the view that UOUs, advance authorization holders and exporters must be eligible for RODTP benefits. This is ROSCT, even though it is not exactly relevant for your industry. The reason why I have used this slide here is that this is, in our view, for the confusion on EOU, SEZ, etc., being denied this RODTP benefit. The ROSCTL scheme was actually a pre-runner, actually preceded the RODTP scheme. The state and taxes, etc., were actually factored in, and the rate was fixed for textile exporters alone. And this scheme was also to come to an end as of 31st December 2020, when RODTP scheme was announced. The rates were notified. But this ROSCTL scheme is being administered by the Ministry of Textiles. So Ministry of Textiles, when they announced this scheme, they actually borrowed the schedule of the drawback schedule that was announced by Government of India. For the textile product, they said we will borrow the entries or the tariff codes and the description in the drawback schedule. When they were doing that, they actually borrowed the drawback schedule notification. And in the drawback schedule notification, if you see that there will be a clear exclusion for exports made by UOU exporters, exports made by advance authorization holders, exports through SEs, etc. There will be a clear bonded manufacturing units, because the drawback scheme was actually compensating, at least after 2017, only the customs duty element involved in the production of the export product, all the inputs that go into the production of export product, any customs duty element there, which could be identified and computed, that customs duty element on an actual basis, if it is a brand rate, or as an all industry average, if it is an all industry rate, only the customs duty element was being refunded to the exporters as drawback. But because these UOU units as well as units were entitled to get their inputs totally customs duty free, the drawback scheme was designed to exclude the exports made by EOUs and advance authorization holder SEZ units, bonded manufacturing units, etc., because they do not incur any customs duty incidence on their inputs. So this was the reason the drawback was actually excluding these sectors, exports from these sectors, for the benefit. But when the ROSCTL scheme was announced by the Textile Ministry, and because they wanted to borrow the tariff description and the tariff codes in the drawback schedule, they simply borrowed the drawback notification, which excluded EOUs. So at that time, an ROSCTL scheme was announced, the textile exporters should have challenged it, but nobody thought fit to challenge. Now what has happened? Government of India, Minister of Finance said that ROSCTL facility, it already borrows the drawback scheme. The DTEP, the RODTP scheme will also follow the same logic, and therefore decided that the UOU AA exporters and SEZ exporters will also not be eligible, because the drawback schedule already excludes those exporters. And RODTP scheme was now trying, the Government of India is trying to design in the RODTP and ROSCTL. They said that EOUs and advance authorization holders and SCs and exporters will not be eligible. But the entire logic is wrong because the drawback itself was designed on a different principles. But both ROSCTL as well as RODTEP were compensating totally different tax elements. So therefore, there is no comparison between a drawback and the RODTP, ROSCTL. Therefore, Government of India should not have actually made the comparison, and they should have taken an independent that whether it is ROSCTL or RODTEP, all exporters, irrespective of whether they belong to UOU or exporting under advance authorization, etc., they will be eligible for the benefit. That was the scheme that was the entire objective of the RODTEP. But unfortunately, there is a confusion because of this ROSCTL scheme. But we hope that this confusion will be sorted out between the Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance. These discussions are going on, and that is the reason why I thought I will discuss about ROSCTL also, because this ROSCTL scheme was the reason for that is what we think. Anyway, let us wait for Government of India to sort this out. Conditions and procedure for availing declaration of intent. As I told you, declaration of intent is a must, even though the rates have not been notified as yet. You have to declare your intent. The shipping bills have already been modified. The declarations have already been modified in the shipping bills. Therefore, the declaration of intent should be there. If it is not there, it is possible that your claim may be denied. And they have given these instructions for what info code you have to give, etc. For your information only. So, declaration is a must. Even though the rates are not notified, after 1st January, any exports, the declaration of intent to claim RODTEP should be there. The position has been now made clear by even courts in the case of MES that if you do not declare, if you don't say why, yes, then your claim may be denied. Then after that, you rush to the high courts to get a relief, etc. But that should not happen. You declare the intent to claim your RODTP benefits, even though the rates are yet to be notified. Since the list of eligible products are not notified, exporters are mandatorily required. They made it very clear. Failure to provide may result in denial of the benefits. So therefore, the intention declaration is very, very important. That's why I thought I should focus it with a specific separate slide. From 1st January, you make your declaration very clear that you intend claiming RODTEP, whether or not you are aware that your product will be eligible. There are a lot of discussions going on. So, Government of India, Ministry of Finance wants to restrict the scope and extent of RODTEP to certain products, whereas Ministry of Commerce wants it to cover at least those products which are already covered in the MES appendix. So there is some discussion going on in that regard. But nevertheless, whether we get the rate or not, at least we should make it very clear in the shipping bill that we intend claiming RODTEP. That should be there. And this is procedural in nature. We have to create an RODTEP credit ledger in the IGCR portal. We have to create our own credit ledger, and all shipping bills filed with RODTEP declaration will be routed through RMS for processing. And once EGM is filed, these are all instructions issued by Ministry of Finance. So we have just captured it. So once EGM is filed, claim will be processed by customs. Once claim is processed, a duty credits crawl for each shipping will be generated and will be reflected in your credit ledger. And you can convert that crawl amount into a duty credit script. You have to do that. By logging into your credit ledger portal, you have to convert it into a credit script. A number of scrolls can be combined and then convert into a single script. So these are all facilities available. Now you have to do it yourself. It is not as if the Government of India will, like they were doing in the case of MES, you apply for it and the DGFT will issue a script. That is not going to happen any longer. You will create your own credit ledger. The shipping bills with the intent to claim RODTEP, customs will process. The system itself will process, and a credit scroll will be generated and reflected in a credit ledger. That can be converted by you as a credit script. So this is the process that is going to happen now, fully automatic, with no intervention from the officers. So only the processing stage, they will be there until the scroll is generated. After that, conversion into script is your entire, that is in your domain. So this is how it will be reflected. I have just captured the screen. Scroll details will be there. You can simply click the generate script button. The script will be generated. And even transfer has been made. We'll discuss that. Utilization. These scripts can be used for making payment of import duties as prescribed, and they have to issue notifications. Now, like they have done in the case of MEAs, for utilization also under Section 25(1) of the Customs Act, there will be notifications issued. That notification will have about the utilization, etc. So that we have to avoid those notifications. But as of now, the information is that this can be used for making your payment of import duties. By giving details of the RODT script, license table of the bill of entry, this is what you've been doing all along. In the case of DAPB, FMS, as also MEAS, that is what we've been doing. The same process will continue. The scheme code used will be RD along with applicable notification number. The notification will be notified later when they notify the rates. And for utilization also, separate notification will be issued in the customs side. We have to avoid that. The script is under suspension, its utilization transfer will not be allowed in the system. For some reason, the script is under suspension. For example, a value is in question. So export valuation is in question. So they may keep, or the money is not realized, they may keep the script under suspension. In such cases, utilization. So all these processes will be driven by the system itself. And like in the case of MES, they are freely transferable, but the transfer will not be done manually by the DGFT was doing it all along. Now, the recipient, you have to go there into your ledger and then do the transfer, and it will be driven by OTP. The transferee will get a OTP only after he confirms. The transfer will be confirmed and then the transfer will be validated. So to avoid disputes coming in the case of invalid scripts or forced scripts being transferred, sold in the markets, subsequently unsuspecting buyers of the scripts utilizing and then falling into the trap, falling into the customs notice and then paying, shelling out customs duty also in addition to making the payment for MEA scripts, for those invalid MEA scripts. So all these problems will be sorted out. Now will not be there because the entire transfer will be completely system driven. You have to transfer it, and the transferee will have to confirm when he receives the OTP. Only after that the transfer will be completed. So these are all measures to safeguard that the transfer is done in a very safe and secure manner, and there is no question of anybody misusing or taking advantage of the system so that those things will be completely wiped out now. So transfer of RODTP scripts, the user to select the script to be transferred, you will have the credit ledger will list out your scripts which are available in your credit ledger. You can select the script, then you can transfer it. User to mention the script IEC number of the recipient. We do not know whether part transfer of one particular script, taking out a part of the amount. As of now, it does not look possible, but something will come up later on when Government of India streamlines the system. So OTP will be sent to transfer, and upon confirmation of the OTP, transfer process will be initiated. So OTP driven, therefore, they have completely ruled out any malpractice. The transfer request can be cancelled before it is approved by transferee. So this is all possible in this completely system driven. Therefore, all malpractices have been completely ruled out. This is a very good move by Government of India to make it completely system driven, and only the script owners who transfer it. Nobody can enter into your credit ledger and then do the transfer. So therefore, the system is foolproof now, as of now. These are all the transfer processes. We've just captured the screen, how it will look like. The transferee can also reject the transfer by clicking cancel. So transferee can also cancel the transfer process. And because it is driven by OTP, it is very safe. And then there are certain issues which we have highlighted. We'll just discuss them. Whether RODTEP can be said to be replacing MEAS rate-wise. So this is a very, very question that all exporters have been asking. Initially, when the RODTEP scheme was being conceptualized, the Ministry of Commerce came out with a proposal saying that the MEAS rates, whatever is available for the export products, in the RODTEP. So we are all expecting that there will not be at least any drop in the MEAS rates. If you are getting 5% now, you should continue to get 5% under the RODTEP. But that does not seem to be possible now because of budget constraints and all that, and because of the introduction of this productivity linked incentives for various sectors, including your own electronic sectors. Now, Ministry of Finance is having second thoughts. In fact, the discussion that is going on between Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance appears to be on this aspect. How many products will be covered under the RODTEP scheme? Ministry of Finance seems to put a cap on the number of tariff lines and also the rates. So these discussions are already taking place between Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance. We are awaiting the final, that is actually delaying the notification of this RODTEP rates, even though the committee have actually finalized for certain sectors. So initially they were thinking that sector by sector they will start releasing the rates, and if one sector rates are released, the MEAs pertaining to the sector will cease to exist. This was the plan, but unfortunately nothing has come up so far. The discussions are still on. And then the next issue is whether SEZ, EOU, AA holders, jobbers will be eligible for RODTEP rates. Under MEAs, they are eligible, but under the SEZ, as I told you earlier, there is some confusion about these sectors getting the benefit, but that also I think will be sorted out. As I said, MEAS was available to these units. Now, if RODTEP is withdrawn for these units, that's a big hit for them. Allowing simultaneous availment of drawback and RODTEP benefits and denying RODTEP when exports made by EOU, etc., will be against principle of equality, because you are saying that drawback and RODTEP benefits are available because the drawback compensates the actual customs duty incidents, actual or average customs duty incidents incurred in the on the inputs used in the export products that was being refunded by way of drawback. And you say that RODTEP, because it compensates embedded taxes, both can be claimed for a given product. But whereas when it comes to EOU, Government of India seems to be saying, no, they are entitled to customs duty exemption. Therefore, we will not grant them RODTEP benefits. That does not seem to be a logical argument, but there is some confusion there, as I said, because of the ROSTL notification, but that will be sorted out. That also will be sorted out, we believe. Government of India and Ministry of Finance have already taken up the issue with the Ministry of Finance, so that will be sorted out. In absence of any declaration of intent at the time of export, whether EOU AA holder can claim RODTEP subsequently. For example, now EOU's AA holders are not permitted even to declare their intent. If they declare their intent, the shipping bill was not being admitted into the system. They are not able to file the shipping bills. So unless they say that they do not want to claim, the shipping bills are not being permitted. The system has been designed in such a manner. Supposing if tomorrow after discussions between the ministries, Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Finance, they decide that EOUs and AA holders will be entitled, now will they be able to claim because the declaration is lacking? So those things will also be sorted out by the ministry. So these are certain issues which we have as highlighted. And deemed export suppliers, they will not be eligible because it is only on physical exports. RODTEP benefits may not be given to deemed export suppliers. Supplied to EOU SEZ. For example, a DTA unit is supplied to EOU, it is treated as a deemed export. And for the deemed export, RODTEP benefit is available. I don't think so. They have just highlighted this, whether this will be available to you. Then which authority will have control? Ministry of Commerce or Ministry of Finance or both? As of now, it appears the Ministry of Finance will have control over the RODTEP, even though the rates are Ministry of Commerce, and ultimately the control will be with the Ministry of Finance. That is how it appears. And who would take action against any defaults or incorrect claims, etc. Customs have already built in certain provisions in the customs law for demanding duties against incorrectly claimed duty credit scripts. That is already there. So our view is customs will take action for recovery, etc. There is already a provision built into the customs. Whether transfer of digital scripts would be treated as a supply. This is a very good question. Our DGFT teams are actually breaking their heads over this. MEI scripts were treated as supply. Transfer of MEI scripts were treated as supply, but there was an exemption. But this is a digital transfer. There is no physical transfer. Whether this will also be treated as a supply is a question that our GST teams will break their head. So this is one question that we wanted that should be highlighted to you. So therefore, this is about the RODTEP scheme. And now, the scheme, the committee is already engaged in determining the rates, and the ministry is in talks with the Ministry of Finance about the scope and extent and also the rates. Therefore, nothing has been finalized as yet, but the onus is on you to submit the data to the committee to get rates fixed for your export product. That you should have already done it because the exercise started way back in September, and the committee is already almost completing the task. If you have not done that, do it immediately through your association. Submit the data to the committee. Try to get rates fixed for all your products so that you will not be left out when the scheme is ultimately announced. This is a very good scheme, and this cannot come under any adverse scrutiny as of now. That is our understanding, that it will not be questioned by the WTO like they have done in the case of MES, etc. Because it helps in it is actually based on the embedded tax and duty incidence, which is a fiscal factor which was not being refunded through any other scheme. So therefore, this is a robust scheme which will definitely stand the test. Any questions before the WTO? This is our opinion. The onus is on you to approach the committee to get the rates fixed, and so that you do not lose out on these benefits. So with this, I'll move on to the next topic, the customs. Import of goods at concessional rate of duty for manufacture of excisable goods from 1996 to 2017. Any questions on RODTP, you can pop them. Finally, when we have the question sessions, I'll try to answer them. So now I'll move on to this customs. For convenience purposes, I'll try to call it as IGCR. We call it IGCR, import of goods at concessional rate of duty. So IGCR, we have 1996 rules, 2016, that was replaced by 2017, and then recent budget, there were some changes made to this IGCR rules. We'll discuss that. It came into effect from 1st September 1996. The first rules were notified in 1996. This actually is not a concession scheme by itself. This rule only prescribes the procedure for availing certain concessions. If a notification is issued in the customs tariff under section 25 of the Customs Act, if a notification is issued providing either a complete exemption or a partial exemption, that notification of the concession is subject to end use of imported products. To verify the end use, these rules were notified. These rules prescribe the procedure for verifying or validating the end use. So what happens is, you are working under the excise law, under an excise registration, under the control of excise authorities, and you are importing certain imports from outside the country, availing certain concessions. Government of India says, I will provide the concession to you, subject to the condition you subject yourself to your verification process by your jurisdictional excise authorities, which is prescribed under the IGCR. So IGCR will say that You go to your excise authorities, tell them that I require these inputs for the manufacture of my final product. These inputs I want to import, and this will be the total duty saving that I will be getting this if I apply this notification, which provides me this concessional rate. And if I do not use these inputs for the stated purpose, then I will pay the differential duty. Agreeing that, undertaking that, he will execute a bond with the excise authorities, his jurisdictional excise authorities, and he will also give a list of inputs that he wants over a period of time, say in a month or in a quarter. He will submit his details to the excise authorities. Excise authorities will countersign that application, which is called an Annexure 3 procedure. As all of you may be aware, who have been working under these rules may be aware, the excise authorities will countersign the total, the description, the value, the duty difference, etc. Everything will be countersigned. That will actually act as a license for you to import. With that annexure, you go to the customs authorities at the gateway port, you import the goods, and the customs authority will verify your annexure, see that as excise officer is countersigned your requirement, and accordingly permit the inputs against that annexure 3, and then allow you to clear the goods. So to get the concession, you require an approval from the excise authority. Number 2, all notifications were not subject to this. Only those notifications which had induced conditions which prescribe adoption of this condition were required to follow. This was the 1996 rules. So a notification providing concession or exemption and also subjecting that concession or exemption to the importer adopting this 1996 rules procedure. These rules will come into play. Then you go to the excise authorities, get the Annexure 3 certified countersigned, come to the customs officer, get the imports concessionally allowed. Then once the goods are inside your factory, the onus is on you to account for the materials and convince the excise official that you have utilized it for the stated purpose. So this is the entire purpose of this 1996 rules. Both the requirements of inputs and the end verification by jurisdictional excise officer. You are supposed to submit monthly returns to the excise authorities on the consumption, utilization, and the balance, etc. So that can also be verified by excise authorities. So there were a lot of issues under separate registration under jurisdiction. You will be already working under the excise law. You would have registered under Rule 9 of the excise, central excise rules. But nevertheless, this rule prescribes that you go to the central excise authorities, get registered again. So this was one requirement. And the estimated quantity of material, etc., certified. This is what the countersigning procedure I explained. The countersigned list of materials to act as a permission for duty-free import. With the countersigned material, you go to the customs authorities, the gateway port, get the materials cleared under the concession rate of duty. Differential duty bond will be executed with the jurisdictional excise authorities. So customs and excise officers were required to work in cooperation. So customs of the gateway port and the jurisdictional excise authorities were required to work with each other. And whereas the onus is on you to account for the receipt, utilization, etc., a monthly statement was required. So this is about 1996 rules. And the 1996 rules had some limitations. For example, you could not remove goods for. You are required to use the material inside your factory, utilize it in your factory. You cannot remove the material because the rules did not provide for it. But the people who have used it, people actually removed it, and then excise questioned it. They went to tribunals and tribunals permitted. Ultimately, utilized for intended purpose. Therefore, a mere removal for job work, etc., should not actually disentitle them these benefits. There were certain tribunal decisions, but still, these questions were being asked by excise authorities. And then recovery in case of default. If you fail to utilize it for the purpose for which it was intended, it was imported. If you fail to utilize it, who will demand duty? The bond will be executed with excise authorities, whereas the duty was customs duty. Excise authorities in their exuberance, they issued demands under Rule 8 of these rules, demanding customs duty, but tribunals track down those demands saying that it is customs duty and you are not the proper officer. As an excise officer, you are not the proper officer for demanding customs duty. It is only for the customs authorities, the gateway port, who could demand it. Therefore, you have to inform the customs authorities, the gateway port, they will issue the notice. So this is posing a lot of problem. Whereas the excise authorities wanted to issue notice immediately, whereas they could not do that. So these were certain problems in 1996 rules. And 1996 rules also did not provide for return or re-export. What happens if I do not require the metal? It becomes surplus to my requirement. Can I return it? The only option available to you was to pay duty and clear it. Pay the merit duty and clear it. So these were issues under 1996 rules. And because these issues were being agitated before various tribunals, Government of India came up with the next improved rules in 2016. This was introduced from March 2016, and no need for a separate registration of premises. This was one relaxation. If you are already registered with Central Excise under Rule 9, you don't need to register again. This was again the tribunals which took the view. Therefore, Government of India accepted that and brought it by way of a provision in the 2016 rules. And instead of a countersigned certificate, all that I needed to do was an information. This is again a relaxation under the ease of doing business concept. They said you intimate the excise authorities that you intend importing so much materials, but you also submit a copy to the customs authorities. The excise authorities, they will send the copy, one copy signed by them to the customs authorities, the gateway port. That itself is sufficient for you to get the benefit. There is no need for any counter signature and all that. So it is a slight relaxation. All that I needed to do was inform the customs excise authorities, inform the customs authorities, and then clear the goods. But accounting again was, the onus is on you to account for it. The officials can come into your factory anytime to verify. And on recovery, because excise authorities are facing problem in issuing notices under Section 28, a provision was made in the law, in the rules itself, empowering the excise authorities to invoke the bond. There is already a bond which you execute. So the bond, instead of demanding duty under Section 28, they can invoke the bond to demand the differential duty. So that power was granted to the excise officers to remove the difficulties in issuing the notice, etc. Rule 8, under Rule 8, they could demand duty, invoking the bond. As a measure of a quarterly consumption, instead of monthly, the quarterly consumption statement was to be submitted to the department. And significantly, re-export of defective surplus materials was permitted within 3 months of import. This also was posing a lot of problem. Within 3 months, you have to determine whether there are any defects in the material imported, whether the materials will be surplus to your requirements. Therefore, you have to decide within 3 months, you can re-export, no duty liability. And the facility was also provided to pay the differential duty and clear the goods in DTA, the domestic tariff area. Instead of exporting, you can simply pay the duty, differential duty. If you have paid 5% and the actual duty payable is 7.5%, you can pay the differential duty and clear the goods in your factory itself. So that facility was also given. That was not available under the 1996 rules. That improvement was also given, that you can clear. Again, within 3 months, you have to do that. If you do not do that within 3 months, then there is a problem whether penal provisions will be invoked because you did not fulfill the condition of dues. Therefore, you will be visited with duty liability, interest, as also penalty. So permission for job work and utilization was again not clearly done. It was still an issue there. Job work permission was not granted. There was no specific provision of the job work. So 2016 rules even tried to address certain issues were left unaddressed. Then came the 2017 rules immediately. After introduction of GST from 1st July 2017, they introduced these 2017 rules. And the customs department, the excise department is no longer there, replaced by GST. Now they made the jurisdictional customs authorities as responsible. Any jurisdictional customs authority having jurisdiction over your facility, your manufacturing unit, they will be the jurisdictional customs authorities. You intimate them, you send the intimation to them and get it signed by them, then you'll start. Then under 2017, another significant change is service providers, not only manufacturing units, even service providers were permitted to import goods for use in the service activity. Again, the information was required to be provided to the jurisdictional customs authorities. Then exemption should be allowed based on the copy of the importer's information received from the jurisdiction. In some cases, what happens, for example, in the case of Chennai, the jurisdictional customs authority and the gateway port may be sitting in the same place. So you go to the jurisdictional customs authorities, get the list signed by them, and then hand the list to the gateway port customs authorities, clear the goods. So only the customs authorities will now be involved in the entire operation. No excise, no GST authorities. And then bond will be executed. As in the case you are executing a bond with excise authorities, now it will be with the customs authorities. So these are certain changes brought in the 2017 rules. Significant changes. Service providers. Service providers were also eligible for this IGCR facility. Again, re-export of unutilized or defective materials were permitted up to 6 months. That is another relaxation. For 3 months under the 2016 rules, they made it 6 months. Within 6 months, you can re-export. Re-export has to be done with the permission of the jurisdictional customs authorities. And the domestic clearance was also permitted on payment of duty up to the period of 6 months. Account has to be submitted to the jurisdictional authorities. Job work, again, though it was not provided clearly, they used two different expressions, one importer, another manufacturer. So they used two different expressions in the same law. Therefore, it was leaving the question open to interpretation. I import and I use the facility of another manufacturer for getting my goods manufactured. So therefore, the 2017 rule by implication was permitting job work. In fact, there are certain custom houses who are permitting job workers, who are permitting removal of material job work using the old excise challan procedures. But still there were certain custom jurisdictions which are not permitting. But the law actually, the rules, 2017 rules, actually permitted job work by implication. So this again was posing the problem. Now, in May 2019, what happened? A draft amendment to the rules was issued proposing to allow job work. Because this job work was posing a big problem, Government of India decided that they will try to allow job work. A draft rule was notified, but that was not immediately brought into effect in May 2019. But now in the present budget, a notification has been, amendment rules have been issued effective from 2nd February 2021, that IGCR rules specifically permits job work. I will see procedure for allowing imported goods for job work. Rule 6A was introduced to the law, but this is effective from 2nd February itself. We don't have to wait until the finance bill gets assent of the president. It is effective from 2nd February. So now, as of now, you can, if you are availing the IGCR 2017 rule facility, then you can send the material to a job worker. Importer can send the imported goods, except gold, jewelry, etc. for job work. For manufacture of goods, have to do intimation to the jurisdictional customs authorities. This is required to specify the name and address of the job worker. Prior intimation is required, and the intimation has to be given to the jurisdictional customs authorities. The old challan procedure, which was already available in the excise law, can be, you can design challans and they can send the material. And the material has to be, maximum period that the job worker can retain the material is 6 months. Within 6 months, the job work has to be completed, and either the job worked material has to come back to you or to another job worker as directed by the importer. So now Rule 6A 2017 IGCR rules clearly provide for job work also. The same procedure, you'll have to maintain an account. The job worker also is required to maintain account of the receipt of the goods, manufacturing process undertaken, and the waste generated if any during such processes, and produce the same as and when required by the jurisdictional customs authorities who actually have permitted the removal of materials from the importer's facility, and send the processed goods to the importer or to another job worker as directed by the importer after completion of job work. So this is the process. And a new rule, sub-rule 7.3 has also been introduced. Now, under the IGCR, there are certain notifications which permit even capital goods. In the case of electronic industry, you must be aware. Notification 25 of 2002, customs permit certain capital goods to be used, and the use is subject to the IGCR rule conditions. So now you have imported capital goods, duty-free, and you are required to follow that IGCR. But these capital goods have become now almost obsolete. Now you want to remove it. You have to, when you remove it, you are required to make a payment of duty. But the IGCR rules permitted that removal within 6 months, only you can remove the payment of duty. But one more concession has been given, that this capital goods, even though the originally imported for a particular value, now you are permitted depreciation at prescribed rates. The rule itself provides the rates of depreciation in a straight line method. There is no maximum limit. For example, if you've used it for more than 7 or 8 years, the depreciation can come to 100% also. So there is no duty liability at all. So there is no maximum limit. As in the case of UOUs, there is no maximum limit for availing the depreciation. Now this is a good facility for those units which have imported capital goods under notification 25 of 2002 and are subject to the condition of following IGCRs. Now you can remove those capital goods which have become obsolete now on payment of duty on a depreciated value, and the value can also become zero. Depreciation shall be allowed from the date when the imported capital goods have come into use up to the date of its clearance for the purpose of depreciation part of the quarter. These are all normal procedures as it is obtaining already. And the maximum, there is no limit on maximum depreciation. Under the UOU scheme, there was a limit that 70% was the maximum, but that has been removed now. So now even here also, they have removed the entire, there is no limit for availing the depreciation. It can become 100%. So this is a very major amendment to the IGCR in the present budget, and this provision has come into effect from 2nd February also. Then they have introduced one more penalty class in these rules. The government cannot keep their hands off these penal classes. So they have introduced the penalty class. Normally, the penal classes will be invoked from the normal Customs Act under section 114, 112, etc. They bring in penal classes whenever there is any violation. But now there is one more penalty introduced in the rule itself. It says that importer and job worker both are made liable now. The amount of penalty is specified already in section 158.2.2 of the Customs Act 1962. The maximum penalty is 2 lakhs. More importantly, the penalty without prejudice to any action taken under the Customs Act, any other action taken under the Customs Act, which means that if there is a penalty involved in the Customs Act, they can also levy penalty under the Customs Act or any other law for the time being enforced, and also levy this penalty under Rule 80. So penalties are possible for violations. So this is another important aspect. Now to sum up, sir, this IGCR rules and the budget changes made. Now they've decided that wherever end-use exemptions are there, old end-use exemptions, they have decided to introduce this IGCR condition to all those exemption notifications. For example, even 100% EOU, they were actually required to work as bonded warehouses, and the 100% EOU location had to be licensed as a warehouse. But those conditions have been removed way back in 2017 itself. Now 100% EOU has to satisfy, has to work under the IGCR. They have to account for the materials imported under the IGCR regulations only, rules only. So almost all exemption notifications are being subject to the IGCR procedures. That is the reason why we thought that IGCR will be an important aspect that we're talking today. So IGCR has become more comprehensive and rounded, and government is also, more importantly, government is open to suggestions. So whenever there is a problem, government have tried to amend job workers, registration, removal. So all these things they have tried to amend to make it easier for importers. The rules now can cover all operations of a manufacturing unit, including job work. So therefore, if you want to avail certain benefits, you can simply go there instead of going through the advance authorization or UOU or bonded manufacturing facilities. This is also one option for you. If your imports are directed through certain notifications, if you are regularly through certain notifications only, and these notifications are permitting concessional rate or exemptions to all your inputs, then and if this notification prescribe IGCR, then you can simply go through that notification subject to the condition. All that you are required to do is to ensure that you use the material according to the conditions prescribed in IGCR, account for it, submit the returns regularly, and then be happy. So compliance and diligence in maintaining consumption accounts will definitely help. Therefore, IGCR also has become an important route for availing concessions. Even IGCR per se on its own does not allow any concession. IGCR is actually linked to many exemption notifications. So if you want to avail exemptions and the exemption notification prescribes adoption of this IGCR, then this IGCR will come into play. On its own, IGCR is not an exemption or an exemption facility. It only gives you the procedure for availing or for ensuring that the exemptions are properly availed. Therefore, if you are eligible for certain exemptions and the exemption notification prescribes adoption of the IGCR conditions, then you need not worry about any other problem. Now IGCR has become more relaxed and more rounded. Therefore, you can go through the process instead of going through advanced authorization, EU bonded manufacturing, which are a lot more demanding in compliance aspects. So therefore, this is one area which we wanted that you should focus your attention on, sir. So this about brings my submissions to my presentation today. And I am now open for questions, sir.
Sir, few of the questions have been posted in the question answer box.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Yeah, as Mr. Manoj was just saying, there are a few questions which are posted. But first, I must compliment you, sir, on extremely and very lucid explanation of a very complex problem. That is why I think people who are legal experts have so much value in this country, because the laws are so complex, and really understanding them and applying them for the benefit of the public is something which is very, very unique. So we really appreciate this, and the entire presentation. Yeah, and I'm not just saying it just like that because you have worked so hard for the last 1.5 hours, and you've been speaking continuously. In fact, I was wanting to request you to take a break for 5 minutes, but I guess you've got more stamina than what I imagined. Sir, there are a few questions which are on the in the chat box and in the Q&A box, and also we have sent you some questions by email, which we had from earlier. So maybe we'll try to take whatever best we can right now.
Okay.
Should I read them out from the Q&A box?
Sir, I'll read them. I'll read them myself. I'll read them.
Okay.
So the first question is from Mr. Ajit Kumar. I can see that. Whether a manufacturing unit or trader can import parts or components by availing the benefit, customs duty exemption of IGCR rules, and sell the imported parts to other units for manufacturing and subsequent export or DTSA. No, sir. You are practically, what you are asking is you want to trade. This IGCR, if you look at, there is a manufacturer condition involved. So as a trader, you may not be eligible to import. If you look at the benefit that you want to avail, the notification that you want to avail, that notification will clearly say these inputs, provided these are required for manufacture of this product, the benefit is available, subject to your following the IGCR rules. So therefore, the notification itself will prescribe an end-use condition. And only when that end-use condition is satisfied, you will be eligible for the benefit. And for satisfaction of the end-use benefit, you have to follow the IGCR benefit. So you cannot say that I want to trade and somebody else is going to manufacture, but I want to give it to them. No. The first stage, the threshold itself, the benefit will be denied to you because the notification will definitely prescribe a manufacturing process, an input required for the manufacture of a final product. That alone will be permitted for import. only those manufacturers will be required to follow IGCR. Therefore, a trader may not be eligible for this benefit. So you'll have to look at the notification first, then come to IGCR. As I said, IGCR is not an independent exemption scheme. IGCR is only a procedure for availing the exemption. The exemption notification, you have to see the condition prescribed in the notification itself. For example, 25 of 2002, which you may all be aware of, 25 of 1999, which is specific to electronic industries. That will say that certain inputs required for the manufacture of certain products. The notification itself will specify both these elements. What are the inputs required? What are the final products required to be manufactured? Then only the benefit will be available. If you are manufacturing, you are a trader, the benefit may not be available to you. Whether the next question is whether option made available in IceGate for creating the credit ledger. Yes, in IceGate there is an option available, sir. I have not tried that because we will not eligible to, we cannot enter the IceGate. But the information that I receive from my clients is that yes, there is an option, but as of now it is disabled because they are yet to announce the scheme. As of now it is disabled, but they will definitely enable this option to you. You can create that portal, create that credit ledger. As of now it is disabled. Then the next question is, what is the timeline for consumption? Clearly, there is no timeline, sir. IGCR rules do not prescribe any timeline, but for removal on payment of duty for exports of surplus goods, as I said, 6 months is the present timeline prescribed, but there is no timeline prescribed in the IGCR. So therefore, as quickly as possible, complete it and go for the next consignment. So it is left to you. No timeline specifically. Then we use import, this request I received through mail also. We used to ferrite code, unfinished form, for which HS code is 8505.1110. We do value addition, which is approximately 25 to 30% in our factory based on our customer's requirement and design, and sell it to our customer with the same HS code. It means we are buying and selling the product the same HS code. Is it a kind of job work? No, sir. Sir, as I told the first question, you can import under the notification, provided the inputs are used in the manufacture of some products. You said ferrite core. Normally this ferrite core will be covered under the notification 25 of 1999. I'm not sure which notification you are. If the notification under which you are bringing ferrite cores prescribes that the ferrite core has to be used for the manufacture of certain products, you have to manufacture that product. Without manufacturing it, you manufacture only, you add only 25 to 30% value addition, you said. If that does not lead to that manufacture, in fact, there is a specific definition for manufacture now in the rules. Therefore, this kind of job work may not be permitted, but the notification will also not permit you to avail that benefit, because ferrite codes, if you are importing, provided the ferrite codes are required for manufacture of certain products, then only the benefit will be available to you. And once you import, you can send it to the job work. The importer IGCR, the value addition, that cannot be treated as a job work. You import certain materials, you cannot complete the entire process yourself, therefore you have to send the material out to somebody else to carry out certain other processes. That is job work. Whereas what you are saying is you are doing 25 to 30% value addition. That can constitute job work. No. The threshold itself, we may be denied the benefit, provided the ferrite codes are required for certain manufacture of operations only, the benefit will be available to you. If you can tell me what is the notification under which you intend importing, I can give you answer more specifically. You can mail to me also, I can send a reply to you, sir.
Mr. Sridharan, I'm Raju Goel. I'm just butting in because this is a slightly special case, and we sent it to you by email also. But I will take some input on you, because this member is having a serious problem, and
okay.
It's funny, while they are doing a lot of value addition, but because the HS code is not changing, they are not able to avail this benefit. So I think they deserve it, but this is a special case, so we have to see whether legally it is applicable or not.
Sir,
Before we go to the next, there are a few more questions which are coming in the chat box also, and they are on the email. I have one little question to ask you, and it is very much relevant for this. In your last slide, on the first, the first line says that now whatever exemptions are available under various notifications have all to be covered under IGCR. That means somebody who was availing a zero duty import benefit under whatever notification can now claim that only if they follow the IGCR process. I want to clarify this because actually we had made a recommendation of this type to the government because we found that a lot of electronic assemblies were being imported under various names. They were coming as assemblies or modules or whatever. 4 or 5 different types of names, and not in small. There were hundreds and maybe even over 1,000 crores or more. So we said that it's not possible to identify because all the assemblies look very similar. So the customs people cannot really identify what is what, and there is often a case of misdeclaration, and it is not known. So we said that why don't we follow the IGCR rule so that whoever is importing has got a checkpoint, faces a checkpoint because they have to declare something. So is this that? I mean, I was just trying to understand that from your last slide.
yes, sir. There is actually in the memorandum of understanding. Normally, government gives out a memorandum of understanding. There, they have described what are the changes they have made. One of the changes they have made, or they have stated that they have made, is that wherever end-use exemptions, various end-use exemptions are there, all end-use exemptions are now subject to this IGCR. There is actually a specific mention about it. Now we have to go through all the notifications and see wherever they have made these changes. There is a specific mention about this in the memorandum of understanding. So I did not get to all the notifications because there are any number of notifications. Now, as I said, the 2 notifications, 25 of 99 and 25 of 2002, they specifically prescribe adoption of this condition, IGCR. So I have to go through all the notifications. Frankly, I have not gone through all the notifications, but this memorandum of understanding clearly says that all wording or end-use exemption notifications are now subject to IGCR conditions. So probably government have taken your recommendation seriously and they are trying to implement it. So now all end-use exemptions will be subject to this.
Okay, because this is specifically important for the mobile manufacturers, and not only mobile, also some other products, some of the telecom products and some of the IT products, which are using a number of assemblies, but they are covered under ITA-1 agreement.
Correct.
They are covered under ITA-1 agreement, so they will not be covered by this, I believe.
ITA, sir, one small submission is this. If they are importing ITA products, yes, they are. But if they are importing the components of these ITA products to manufacture, they are subject to this condition. The ITA notification itself will say that if for manufacture of all those, and there will be about 30 different items covered under that notification. There are 2 notifications. One is 24, one is 25 of 2005.
Right.
24 of 2002, there will be 32 items. The 33rd entry will be all goods, materials, etc. required for the manufacture of 32 items will be eligible for the benefit, duty-free benefit, subject to the importers following IGCR.
Correct.
So therefore, IGCR condition already built into 24 and 25 of 2005.
Right. Okay. Thank you. We'll come back to it. Sorry, I won't take more time. I think there are some more questions, and then you may like to stop at some time. So certainly choose. The questions are there, and there are 1 or 2 questions in the chat box also. Yeah,
I'm just looking at the chat box. Can we RODTP script benefits for payment of re-import customs duty, including so customs duty? There is no separate re-import customs duty. It is customs duty. Re-imported goods are treated as imported goods only. Under Section 20, goods imported in India, even though they are originally from India, they are treated on par with imported goods. Therefore, the duty, if at all you pay, that is actually customs duty. Therefore, there is no bar on using this RODTP scripts, even whenever they are issued. You can use them for paying customs duty. What you are paying is only customs duty, even though these are goods re-imported to India. So there is no bar. And then the next is when we book the shipment for export, where we have to put RODTP details or where we have to inform the transporter. When we book the shipment for export, where we have to put our RODTP. So these are all the shipping bills. RODTP details are shipping bills only. Like you do for your drawback, the procedure will come. Definitely the procedures are now sketchy. When the notification is issued, the RODTP scheme, the ADI system and customs will also be tweaked. And only the shipping bill will give the details about RODTP. There will be separate columns. Like you do in the case of drawback, you'll have to indicate the drawback serial number, the drawback description, the drawback amount, etc. Similarly, you will be required to indicate from the RODTP notification, you'll have to take out the serial numbers and the description of your product and indicate it in the shipping bill. But we'll have to await the notifications. Definitely the instructions will be issued. Then under IGCR, I think it is from Mr. Ajit Kumar again. Under IGCRD rules, is it mandatory to use the imported materials for manufacture in the same unit itself? Not required, sir. Not required. All that you need to tell them is that I'm going to use it in this premises and then import it. Then if you want to change the unit or premises, you can always go back to customs and tell them that for this purpose you want to transfer the material another unit of yourself. Therefore, get the permission and move it. Without getting the permission, do not move the materials. The people landed in trouble under the 1996 rules, but tribunals had come to the rescue. So long as the importer is able to account for the material in the final product produced, whether it is manufactured in the same premises or another premises, that should not matter, is what tribunal ultimately decided. But that, so long as you take the permission from the customs authorities. Now, customs authorities or the permission giving authorities, go to tell them that this is what is happening. Like in the case of job work, the generator, send it to another unit for getting the goods process done or the entire manufacturing done. If entire manufacturing is going to be done in another unit, go to the customs authorities, change the description of the name of the manufacturer and the address, etc. So you can always do it with the express approval of the customs authorities. And the question from Mr. C.K. Kapila. Notification 25 of 98 and 25 of 2024 of 2005 also specified to follow. Yes, there are a number of notifications. As I told you, the IGCR by itself is not an exemption. There are already a number of notifications which prescribe this condition. Now, Government of India have decided that wherever an end-use exemption is provided, that will be subject to IGCR. They are making the changes now. That is what President was also asking me. Yes, that is happening. There is a specific reference in the Memorandum of Understanding, memorandum that all end-use exemptions will be subject to IGCR conditions. Also, these are about the questions that I have. If there are any other questions, I'll handle them. Even if you have any specific questions specific to your unit, I would prefer not to answer it because of confidentiality and all that. You can send a mail to Mr. Manoj. Manoj will forward it to me. I'll answer them as quickly as possible, sir. Yes, if there are any other questions, I'll take that. Otherwise, we can close this.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, would you like to take the questions which we forwarded with?
That I've already answered.
Okay, sir.
I think I have already answered.
Thank you, sir.
The chat boxes also. Deepika Gulati, it says, hello sir, earlier case was if you are availing drawback, then you cannot claim MES. There was no bar on MES and drawback being claimed simultaneously because they were, drawback was granting you some other benefit, one benefit. MES was kind of completely different. Both of them were no relation at all. There was no bar on claiming drawback and MEAs. I do not know from where you got this information. There's no bar. What is the exact date? Deepika Gulati again, what is the exact data to be shared? How we are taking rates on our different products in this? Madam, this they have already designed 3 different formats collecting data. So that data you have to provide to the committee. Committee will come to will fix the rate. So if you want that formats, I think individual exporters cannot send it to the committee. Committee gets the data only through the associations. So probably you'll have to go through your association, submit the data. Association will take out sample export products. For each product, at least 5 samples will be collected. The data will be collected from those exporters, and the data will be shared with the committee. So therefore, you cannot directly approach the committee as an individual exporter. You will have to go through your association, and the type of data that they require is already there in the format. If you have any questions on the data, how to collect the data, any entry in the format, etc., please come back to us. We will be glad to clarify. Excuse me. Whether ADD and safeguard duty will also be covered under RODTP. 1 minute, sir.
So I think maybe we'll make it the last 1 or 2 questions, and then we will take more queries online, because I think it's already very late, and I think we have taken a lot of your time and energy. So possibly, I would request you that you can make it, the last but 1 question, and then we'll take more online.
Yeah, as of now, only BCD is intended to be covered under RODTP scheme. So ADD and safeguard duties are not supposed to be covered. So this is the position as of now. But ultimately, when the rates are notified, we do not know. But it's only the BCD. And then the next question is from Mr. Nilima Karwade. We are resistor manufacturer. We also import raw materials. So are we eligible for RODTP and IGCR? Madam, if you are exporting your final product and the final product gets a rate notified by the committee, you will be eligible. So long as you are not in EOU or manufacturing under advance authorization, as of now, there are some confusion, but ultimately it will be sorted out. But if your product gets notified, a rate is notified for your product, you will be eligible. And as for IGCR, if the notification that you are importing your materials from prescribes IGCR condition, you have to follow that. So I need to know the notification that you are importing your materials. Then if the notification condition prescribes IGCR, then only you are required to follow the rules. So I think I'll close this. And the remaining questions, I'll ask Mr. Manoj Gupta to send it to me. I can answer them online.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. I think you have already answered a very large number. And I have nothing else but praise for you and your patience, and I think it's been a great session. I hope that the participants also would have really gained from this, because we are all aware that RODTEP particularly is a bit of a black hole right now, because we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know the date. All the items which are covered under that. I think there are a lot of questions, and particularly I found that the changes in the IGCR are very significant. While we were reading some of the documents, we are never really able to fully understand because they are so complicated. But we did realize that there are clear changes in the IGCR. I found the last slide particularly very interesting, because it is actually going to make sure that all the importers importing what sort of I would say declaration to make at least, and they are liable to the fact that they have to say the truth, and they cannot just declare right away, because we did some research on this.
Absolutely.
Sir, on behalf of and our executive committee and I think all the participants also.
Thank you, sir.
Touch with you, and we will try to also engage with the members and bring them up to you.
you, sir.
Thank you so much. Very, very much.
It has always been a pleasure, and you can always get in touch with me. I am here to clarify, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye to all the
Bye, then. I am leaving it. Thank you.